When disaster or trouble strikes, we've got to learn how to adjust. And we've got to learn how to overcome. We can't lie down as victims. We can't complain about the country, the economy, and the circumstances. We've got to be overcomers. Not only must we be overcomers, we must help others to overcome in their time of challenge. You know, it's the overcomer who understands that it's not about the challenge, but it's about what's on the inside of you. And I believe God is speaking to men in a very specific way today. And I want to speak to you under the title, Reproducing an Army of Overcomers. We mustn't just be overcomers, we need to reproduce ourselves if we're going to change the world and change the nation. Jesus took himself and reproduced himself in the disciples. When he was gone, they continued his work. They certainly were overcomers, crucified upside down, tortured, mistreated. And I believe that God is calling men today not to sit back, lie down, but to be overcomers and to reproduce themselves in others. Let's read a key text from 2 Samuel chapter 21. It's in your outline. And it begins by saying, once again there was a battle between the Philistines and Israel. David went down with his men to fight against the Philistines. Always remember, the enemy will always call you down from where you are. Don't submit to that. And the Bible says he became exhausted. Circle the word exhausted, because even when you're a mighty man, you can become exhausted. You might be in this meeting today and you feel exhausted and you're feeling embarrassed by it. But great men of God, called of God, anointed of God, can become exhausted. And there's no shame in that. And the Bible says a man by the name of Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of Rapha. Why don't you circle the word descendants, because it's very important. We're talking generationally here. Descendants of the giants, whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels and was armed with a new sword. Why don't you underline the words new sword? And notice here it says, just look up for a moment, 300 shekels. Do you know that when David fought against Goliath, Goliath's spear weighed 600 shekels? But this man, his spear weighed half that, and David became exhausted. And it's not just the size of the battle, it's the season that you find yourself in that is sometimes a challenge. Every one of us is in a different place. And this man, armed with a new sword, said he would kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue. He struck the Philistine down and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, never again will you go out with us to battle, so that the lamp of Israel will not be extinguished. In the course of time, there was another battle. Can you see that this is the second time it's mentioned that there's a battle with the Philistines at Gob? At that time, Sibbecai, the Hushathite, killed Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. In another battle with the Philistines at Gob, Elthanan, the son of Oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. In still another battle, which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. Maybe you got a friend like that. He was also a descendant from Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of Shimeah, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were descendants of Rapha in Gath, and they fell at the hands of David and his men. First thing we need to understand about being overcomers and reproducing overcomers, what's happening in my life. Number one, first thing I want you to notice this morning is there will always be battles to overcome. It will never be easy, and it will never become simple. There will always be battles to overcome. There were 4 battles, 4 giants, 4 overcomers, and there will always be things. Life is never easy. Don't look for easy. When you look for easy, you die. You shrivel up. Number 2, the second thing I wanted to speak to you about here under reproducing an army of overcomers is the enemy is primarily targeting men and leaders. We need to be aware that we are being targeted. But what's our response? Number 3, every overcomer needs to have overcomers as friends. The battle is on and the battle is fierce. And David was not only an overcomer, but he had overcomers as friends. No matter how strong you are, each one of us will face battles that will make us fall, that will exhaust us. And we need good friends, men around us who can tell us the truth. You need relationships and you need to be supported. The battle's on. He's targeting men. And you need a friend. Every overcomer needs overcomers as friends. Number 4 is what we are, we will always reproduce. You cannot reproduce overcomers if you're not an overcomer yourself. You know, if you look at Saul, King Saul's leadership versus David's leadership, King Saul, when confronted by Goliath, was not an overcomer. For 40 days and 40 nights, Saul did nothing. He had armor, he had opportunity, he had experience, but he had no guts. David had no armor, no real experience in battle. He'd fought the lion and the bear, but he had faith and he had guts. He was an overcomer in spirit. Saul didn't fight Goliath. Saul never fought any of the enemies of God. He kept Agag alive, and hence he reproduced after his kind. You'll never see in his army any overcomers. David fought a giant, and his men follow him and become giant killers themselves. Number 5. I trust you're being helped by this morning and just letting the text speak. We must identify the giants and take them on as men. Jesus, speaking in Luke chapter 10, says, I've given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. I love that verse because you know what it tells us? We shouldn't be trampled on. We should trample on. I want to be one of those people that one day when I step away, people will remember he overcame and he taught us how to overcome. Do you want to be a man like that? Come on, give God praise this morning.